to the ABC Podcast.
Always be cool.
The show where your hosts, DC and BK, showcase your local business and real estate pros going gangbusters in leadership, community involvement, and just being cool.
Here are your hosts, serial entrepreneurs, mortgage experts at Summit Lending, and partners in crime, Darren Copeland and Bobby Kerr.
All right, this is the ABC Always Be Cool podcast with your hosts, Bobby Kerr, Darren Copeland.
What's up, everybody?
And our good friend, Royals and Major League Baseball Hall of Famer, Mr. George Brett.
Holy cow, right? So I started working on
this guy.
That's Paul Stanley of
Paul
KISS.
Stanley. Right. So, George, I started working on the introduction, and it could be an hour long, but I'll dive in on the introduction here. So, born May 15th, 1953 in West Virginia, relocated to Southern California a few years later, drafted by the Royals in 1971, played 21 seasons for the Royals from 1973 to 93, inducted to the Major League Hall of Fame in 1999, first ballot Hall of Famer with 98.2%. I'd like to know those other two yahoos that didn't vote for that 2%. 13-time All-Star, 1980 AL MVP, 1985 Gold Glove. These are really cool. Only Major League Baseball player in history to win batting titles in 3 different decades. Also, George is one of 5 players in MLB history to accumulate 3,000 hits, 300 home runs, and career 300 average. Member of the 85 World Series team. He is married to his wife, Leslie, and they have 3 children in Jackson, who is named after your father, correct?
Right.
Dylan, who is named after Bob Dylan, and Robin, who is named after fellow Hall of Famer Robin Yount with the Brewers.
You did your homework. Good, right? You did your homework good, yeah.
Bobby and I tell people we do more research now than what we did in high school and college.
And don't forget that resume is badass golfer, too.
And total badass golfer, man. Welcome to the show, George. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Absolutely.
Can I make one suggestion?
Yes.
Put your studio a little closer to where I live. Okay?
We can do that.
I mean, I had lunch today at Charleston's. You know where Charleston is? It's in the mall over there on State Line, in between State Line and Ward Parkway.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're getting done with lunch, and I said, I'm about halfway through with lunch, and I said, God, I wonder how long it's going to take me to get there. So I pull up my phone. It said 22 minutes.
Right.
And so I left at 1 o'clock and got here. I was told you I'd be here at 1:30.
Yeah.
I got here at 1:29.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Close enough, man.
Perfect.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, we appreciate that.
I'm thinking about just driving around here a little bit because I have nothing to do the rest of the day.
Wow.
And
Right.
I was thinking about, is Lake Lotawana close to here?
That's where I live.
That's where Bobby lives.
I live there
I
full
was
time.
I was thinking about just going out there because I almost bought a house there years ago.
Let's just go out there this afternoon. We'll go on the boat and hang out.
No, I don't want to do that.
Don't
I just
push
want
it,
to
man.
just drive around a little bit.
No, it's a good
just
place to
kind of
drive
experiment this part of town, which I never
Right.
get to.
It's actually really cool.
Yeah.
It's actually cool. One of our favorite restaurants is 2 blocks away from here. So Summit Bar and
What is
Grill.
that?
Summit Bar and Grill, who's owned by Andy Locke.
Yeah, the quarterback's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Drew's
Yeah.
dad. Literally.
They
within
have a
walk-
Summit Grill off don't tell me, Warnell and 75th.
That's exactly
I've
right.
been to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been to
There's
that
one
one.
right here.
phenomenal.
We just walked through
Yeah.
the parking lot. We're right there.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Cool.
next time we'll go to Kansas and do this if we need to.
Yeah, we'll go
So-
hang out and do a remote session.
Exactly.
I like all
So
your stuff.
That's my
That's your 74?
Well-
You shot a 74 one day?
I've shot better than that. But
No way.
This round was special to me. By the way, no one's ever asked about that stuff. So my grandpa Jack,
Okay.
who taught me how to play golf, I was out in North Carolina playing, and he passed away on the day that I shot that, played by myself just randomly, and I got a call, hey, Grandpa passed away.
Oh, you're kidding.
So I saved the ball in the scorecard that day, so it was just like my way of...
Is that your low score ever, 74?
No, I shot a 773 a couple times.
Wow.
So
yeah, that's pretty good.
That's really good.
That's
Yeah.
really good. So
anyway, yeah, thanks for asking about that.
cool. All right, so we have a ton of questions
Okay.
for you, George.
Okay.
So
Story time, question,
yeah,
and
story
answer.
time. Yeah,
Just whatever. Roll.
anything. Right on. All right, so I had a question for you. So I know you've got a lot of good stories over the years. We talked at fancy camps and things like that. So was there any particular pitcher that for whatever reason that you just kind of had his number over the
Yeah.
years?
There was one guy, Ed Figueroa.
Okay, tell us a little bit about that.
Ed Figueroa, I think at one year I was 13 for 13 off him.
Oh my gosh.
That's unbelievable.
Seriously?
That's
Seriously.
unbelievable.
And the time I made it out, the first time he got me out, he was pitching for the Angels, and we were playing in Anaheim Stadium. and they hit a rocket right up the middle. Jerry Remy's playing second base for the Angels. He dives over, backhands it, and throws me out by a foot. And that was the third out of the inning. And as he came off the field, all the players on the Angels gave him a standing ovation because he finally got me out. And he had good stuff.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of guys I faced that didn't have good stuff that I couldn't hit. And I think Eddie was a 20-game winner a couple times. And we'll have this guy go check it out while we're doing this, and he'll pull it up. But it was an amazing thing. For some reason, I saw the ball really good off him. And, you can, in my opinion, a baseball hitter's job is just to hit the ball hard.
Right.
And sometimes you're going to hit it right at him, and you're going to make an out. I never hit one right at anybody. Which was
just happened to go
incredible.
through.
It just happened to be gappers. The line drive over the second baseman's head. He jumps up and misses it by an inch.
Right.
A ball in the gap. The guy dives for it and misses it by an inch. And I think it was 13. I went 13. Oh, I think that year, I went something like 15 for 17 off of it.
That's just
wow.
Yeah.
Now, is that one of those circumstances that do you like kind of give him some ribbon after the game?
No, I never talked to opposing pitchers. Right. I didn't talk to many players on opposing teams, but especially the pitchers. Right. And it was one of those things after you go 5 for 5 off them one game, or you go 3 for 3, and then the next time you're 4 for 4 off them. And all of a sudden you're saying, God, I know he's going to drill me. I just know he's going to drill me. Right. So sure enough, I'd get up there, and now I'm 10 for 10 or 11, 12 for 12 off him. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, I'm going to get on my heels because I know he's going to throw one right at my head, try to intimidate me.
Right.
He never did. Yeah. He never did. And he lives in Puerto Rico right now, and I think he owns a bar down there. And somebody asked him, hey, you pitched 15 years in the major leagues. Who was the toughest batter you ever had to face? He said, without a doubt, it didn't matter what I threw George Brett, he would get a hit, and he hit it hard somewhere. Right. But it's, never really said a word to him. Never really said one word to Eddie Figueroa in my whole life.
Well, that's crazy. You know what gets me? So we've had Duke and Dina on the show.
Oh.
We've had you, we've had Fitzy, we've had Les, we had Bluma. The fact that you guys will recall specific at bats,
right,
from whether no matter the decade, whether it's the 60s or 70s, 80s, 90s, exact at bats, the count, the outs, like you just said, it was the third out of the inning when you hit that up.
Right. Well, I couldn't tell you what I had for lunch 2 days ago.
Right. But
exactly.
that's part
of
my
wife, I do a lot of shopping because my wife has a flower shop.
Yeah.
And so it's always a lot of times, it's like, hey, what time are you going to come home? I'll be home at 5:30. Are we staying home tonight? Yeah. What do you want for dinner? I'll go to the store and get it. And I'll forget some almost every time.
Right.
So now if I have to go to the store and get a lot of things, then it's like, well, just text me over everything I got because I'll never remember.
Same way.
Yeah.
And then I walk into the grocery store and I got my little list like this, and I'm going, okay, good. I know where that is. Okay, Lord, go get that. Like most people when they walk through I go from top to bottom. So I'm starting over here in the vegetable department. Then I go over there. Then I go, oh, I got to get, okay, that's over there. And back and forth, back and forth.
I'm sorry.
You're walking 2 miles.
My wife could go through that thing and just go here
map it
and
out.
go up and down every aisle. I go up and down every aisle 4 times.
That's amazing.
But I meet a lot of people there, so it's fun.
Oh, sure, it's fun. As we were doing the research for the show, it was so fun because there's so many stories and there's so many positive things that happened through your career. So, my grandpa started taking me to the Royals games when I was very young. So in 1976, I would have been 4 years old. You go to the old GA seats that are out in the corner of Kauffman, right? So one thing that I did want to touch base on. So there's a really cool story about the batting the title championship in 1976.
Right.
How basically there was 4 guys coming down to literally the last day. And you guys were actually playing them.
Well, we were playing the Twins. Yeah. It was Hal McRae and myself, Lyman Bostock, and Rod Carew.
Yeah.
And Rod Carew had won 7 batting championships in a row.
Freakish.
Yeah. And he wasn't a power hitter, but he was an artist. He was a Rembrandt with a bat.
Right.
He had a pretty stroke. He was a great bunter. So if I didn't play back, he would bunt. If I played way in, he would hit a by you. He could really manipulate the head of the bat. Lyman Bostock was an up-and-coming guy, maybe his 3rd or 4th year in the big leagues. I'd say, I would say he was kind of like me. Maybe he came up a year after I did.
Okay.
And Hal had been around for a while, and I remember one at bat. I don't know what it was: 331.56, 331.49, 330. They had to carry it out 5 digits to see who was actually winning.
They had to move the decimal point out.
Yes, they had to just to see who was winning.
Oh my God!
It was crazy, and I ended up going 3 for 4 that day. And my last at bat got jammed a little bit. And the funny thing it was off a guy named Hughes. And Jimmy Hughes, ironically enough, he went to Bishop Montgomery High School in Southern California. I faced him in high school.
No way. How
is that unbelievable?
The odds of that.
So, yeah.
So you guys kind of knew each other.
Well, we knew each other. And then I was dating some gal a little bit. I was seeing her. I wasn't really dating her, but I was seeing her. He ended up marrying her. It's the craziest. You can't make this crap up. So he ends up marrying her. I can't remember her name. Hope she's not listening. But he ended up marrying her, and now he still has a job with Rawlings. He's worked for Rawlings since he's retired from baseball. But I got a little the left fielder come running in, and we played on AstroTurf, when it was a hot day. And of course he's going, oh my God, it's going to bounce over me. So he coming in and he stops, and the ball bounces over his head. I get it inside the park.
No way.
Hal comes up next, and he hits a ground ball to shortstop, and I ended up winning by 1 point.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So how was that? You guys are buddies, and
Well, Hal was pissed because he thought the left fielder let it drop on purpose, and Gene Mock was the manager, and Hal started screaming. He wanted to go over and fight him, so it did take a little fun away from me winning my first batting championship.
Sure.
And Rod was great with it. He was great. Lyman Bostock was great. Anytime you do something, you win 7 batting championships in a row. You don't want to lose.
Sure.
I think Rod got 2 hits that day. I got 3, and I ended up beating Hal. I think if Hal got to hit his last at bat, he would have won.
Really?
And he hit the ball hard, hit a ground ball right to the shortstop. I think it was Roy Smalley, and they threw him out at first. And
wow.
I think the game was over right then because I did mine in the 9th inning.
Right. Just what's the chances of that ever happening?
No,
again?
all 4 guys and
playing each other,
competing.
Yeah.
Well, nowadays they don't even give a. Can we cuss on this
yes.
show?
Yeah.
They don't even give a shit about batting average. All I hear about is OPS. I don't even know what that means.
Right.
On base plus slugging. Why don't you just say, okay, how many home runs does he have and what's his batting average? Everything is OPS related.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Right. Launch angles.
Well, I don't get that shit.
Right.
Same thing. Yeah, all those stats that came around this era.
Yeah. I can't even read an article on baseball because they have all these things and I don't understand what they mean.
Right.
And you know what really pisses me off is they don't have box scores in the paper.
I know. I used to live for that.
That's what I used to do every day.
morning. That's how I started my morning.
When I named my son Robin, after Robin Yount, we were in the hospital, and Robin's my youngest boy. He's 26 years old, so we're sitting in the hospital, and the girl's doing the sonogram on my wife's belly, and next thing you know, she goes, and I'm looking at it, and I'm kind of a pro at this stuff now, and I said, oh, is that what I think it was? She goes, yeah. My wife goes, God damn, you got to be kidding me.
Not another one?
Yeah. And so then we're sitting there and the doctor's doing, talking, and I'm sitting there reading the box scores, and I look at the Chicago White Sox and I see Robin Ventura.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And now I'm thinking of a boy's name, and I go, God, I've always enjoyed playing against Robin Yount. I said, why don't we name him Robin? She said, that's fine. Good name.
That's
Wow,
amazing.
that's how it
How's
came,
that?
huh?
That's
it came
amazing.
from the box score, though.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you
awesome.
ever have a conversation with Yount? Like,
Oh yeah, my son Robin's got a signed jersey in his in his bedroom when he lived with us at home. It's still in his bedroom, a signed jersey from Robin.
That's cool.
That's
got a
amazing.
nice jersey with an autographed and a baseball card in it.
That's awesome.
That's super
So
cool.
you
And
mentioned
Robin and I are great friends to this day. I'll see him in a couple weeks in Cooperstown.
that's cool.
That's
I hang out
amazing.
with him a lot. We have dinner
Right.
with him and his wife Michelle, and look forward to. We play golf together on Sunday morning before the induction ceremony. Me and Robin always got to be on the same team,
Right.
And Schmitty got to be on my team, and
Right. I bet that's so speaking of sons and kids, so you had 3 brothers. So
Right.
there was 4 Brett brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when we started, talking about having you come on the podcast. So Bobby and I had the pleasure of being on your team last year at fantasy camp, right? And we were partaking in a few cocktails and some chips and salsa at your favorite Mexican joint that we go to in Surprise.
Real Mirage.
And you were telling some really cool stories about your brother, Ken.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to just to touch base on that because it kind of blew us away. So Ken, at the age of 19, a lot of people don't know this, but at the age of 19, he actually pitched in the 1967 World Series.
He got drafted out of high school by the Red Sox. First, he was the fourth player taken, and he could have went to any college in the country, been a quarterback or a center fielder pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So a guy named Steve Chilcott goes number 1. Reggie Jackson goes number 2. I forget who goes number 3. And then my brother Ken was drafted. So he goes to Oneonta in the New York Penn League in 66. 67, he's pitching somewhere, and they call him up, September call-up, to the big leagues. He's 19 years old.
Wow.
Somebody got hurt on the team, so they made him eligible to be in the World Series. To this day, he's the youngest pitcher ever to pitch in a World Series game.
That's amazing.
But he was a tremendous athlete. A lot of people say he's one of the greatest athletes ever to come out of Southern California.
Right.
He was a good basketball player. He was everything in football, quarterback, and he was California State Player of the Year 2 years in a row.
That's amazing.
Check this out. I have
That's
this
amazing.
at home.
Yeah.
I love that one.
Isn't that crazy?
He was so popular, he got traded 11 times because everybody wanted him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or he overstayed his welcome. And the first time he pitched for the Royals, he was released. He got released. The Dodgers released him. Tommy Lasorda released him. And they brought up some guy from Mexico named Fernando Valenzuela.
Yeah, I've heard
Some
of
guy.
that.
So some guy.
Yeah.
And so they said, hey, Ken, I'm sorry, we don't have room. We're going to bring up Fernando. So he's just putzing around, and he ends up going back to Boston because he lived in Boston forever.
Okay.
And I was playing in Kansas City in 1980. And so he just says, my brother's having a pretty good year. I think I'm going to stop and visit him for the weekend. And he knew Jamie Quirk really well, and he knew some of the guys on the team just from playing against us. And Billy Connors, our pitching coach, saw him. He was in the locker room with us one day before a game, and he says, hey, what are you doing nowadays? And he says, nothing, just trying to figure out what I'm going to do the rest of my life. and he says, God, can you throw? We don't have one left-hander that we trust on the Major League team.
Wow.
And he just happened to be visiting you.
Just happened to be visiting.
Wow.
So he says, yeah, probably. I don't know. I haven't picked up a ball in a while. So he says, hey, you want to go throw a side in the bullpen? He goes out the right field bullpen, Royal Stadium, shorts and T-shirt, and put on a pair of my spikes probably, and went out there and threw. They signed him. He flies home, gets a bunch of stuff. He goes to Omaha. He pitches in Omaha for a month, and then he's on our team the rest of the season in 80 and all of 81.
No way.
Yeah.
That's
I didn't know
amazing.
that.
Is that unbelievable?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Isn't that the great? So I actually have one of the 1980 baseball cards with Ken on it.
Do you really?
Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So how was that? Like
Oh,
hanging
it was a
out
blast. It was a blast.
That's
playing.
special.
Oh,
It really
gosh.
was. It really was. I played against him, when he was pitching for the Angels or the Twins or the White Sox. He played for the Phillies, Brewers. That was before I got to the big leagues. He was with the Brewers. But he played for, I think, 10 or 11 teams. And playing against him was a lot of fun, but having him on my team was really, it was a special time for the two of us.
That's super special.
And it was 1980, the year I almost hit 400, so we had a lot of fun together.
Heck yeah, that's cool. He had a front row seat.
That's
Absolutely.
super cool.
You know,
And I think he bet on me too in Vegas because you could bet back then. They had a line in Vegas. He bet on me.
Did he really?
And man, every time I'd go, I was 400 with 2 weeks to go.
Right.
He's feeling pretty good. We went to Seattle. I went 1 for 11. I didn't strike out once. Hit the ball hard 7 times. My only hit was a home run.
Okay.
And what I was talking about earlier, your job's to hit the ball hard. Sometimes they're going to catch it.
Right.
They're 25 games out of first place, and the center fielder, Johnny Moses, is diving, catching balls. Mario Mendoza, the shortstop, diving up the middle, throwing me out by. I'm going, you got to be kidding me. Give me a break. If you guys were that good, you wouldn't be 25 games out of first place. No shit.
Amazing.
And
they're
I
just
ended up
playing out
going
there.
1 for 11. And I get the average went down to like 390 or something, and then it got down to as low as 383.
You went on a hot streak.
And then
at
I
the
got
end.
hot
Yeah.
the last 5 games, hit 500 to get it to 390.
We're talking about being special and having some special things. How about the fact that you and Duke both have been with this organization for 50 plus years?
Yeah, that's amazing.
That is
Mind-boggling.
amazing.
Absolutely
Unheard of.
mind-boggling. But I've done it consecutively. Duke went to Boston.
Right.
He went to the Angels. I'm in my 51st year with the organization.
That's incredible.
One guy's done it longer. We lost Art Stewart. Art was here since 69. Denny Matthews been with him since 1969.
Sure.
And then it's me.
That's amazing.
So it's crazy. Every 2 weeks, I got a paycheck. It's the damnedest thing I've ever seen.
Duke was saying the same. Well, Duke told the story how the Wathen family is. They've got 4 or 5 people that have been on the payroll.
Right. Everybody. I think his wife was, because she used to make these breakfast
Right.
burritos.
That's what he's
and
yes,
God, they were
yes,
so. This is before they had a full-time chef in the kitchen down there in the locker room. But his wife would make these breakfast burritos, so the Royals would give her a check. Dusty played for the Royals. Derek did some stuff for the Royals. Dina works for the Royals. She's my boss there.
That's what she said.
Dina's my boss.
She said,
she's my boss.
I'm George's boss.
She can be intimidating.
I got to call her today. I have a buddy of mine that owns Hooray Grills. Doesn't own it. He works for him. And so he's outside Wichita and went there over Thanksgiving. And we had a big barbecue, me and him and his kids, and out at his farm, and we cooked all this stuff on the Hooray Grill. Have you ever seen one?
No.
The best grill ever.
Really?
And so he called me and said, in fact, I got a Hooray at my house, but my son Jackson stole it, so it's at his house right now. He said, hey, I got to get you the new one. I got to get you the new grill. I said, okay, fine. He says, yeah, we're thinking about bringing, my kid's Little League team up there. Well, great, bring them up. I'll get you tickets. Get a thing today. God, I think he said they need 45 tickets.
Oh, my gosh.
I don't know if I can call Dina and say, Dina, I need 45 tickets. So I think what I'm going to do is just go buy him 45 tickets.
Right.
And say, okay, here,
we
Dina,
can call her.
Tell this guy how to pick up the tickets. Because I don't know. Every time I went to a sporting event, you had a paper ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't have paper tickets anymore.
No.
You got to download the app and you got to do all this.
Yeah.
Well, I've never used one of those.
It's crazy.
Never used one. I have always.
You have to prepay for parking.
Yeah.
No, you can't even get a parking pass anymore
Yeah.
at the
So,
gate.
I think I'm just going to buy 45 tickets. And
Tell them to pick up a will call.
Well,
go with it.
I don't know how you do it, but rather than ask, because that's a big ask for me.
Right, right.
That is.
Well, I know there's a lot of influential people, in your career along the path, but you mentioned this to us, when you do some of the hitting down at fantasy camp, and help us guys who want to play baseball. But tell the listeners a little bit about how big an impact Charlie Lau had in your career, because he was the Royals hitting coach, right? And just did some amazing things. You guys had a really special bond.
Yeah,
together.
it was kind of father-sonish. It really was. It was. In my first year out of high school, I was playing in Billings, Montana. I hit 291, which was good. I mean, everybody was happy with that. That was fine. And the next year I go to San Jose. I hit 282. I think I hit. I don't know what I hit there. Maybe 270, 280. But I'm the youngest guy in both leagues I'm playing in.
Right.
And then I go to AAA. I skip AA and go to AAA. I hit 282. I didn't even know what I'm doing. I'm just going up there, seeing the ball and hit it.
Yep.
I didn't know anything about fundamentals. No one ever, my high school coach didn't teach you how to hit. If you were a good enough hitter, you played. If you weren't a good enough hitter, guess what? You didn't play.
Right.
And so all of a sudden I get called up to the big leagues, and my first at-bat hit a line drive right back to the pitcher. He caught it. Next at-bat, broken bat single to left. And then we left Chicago. We went to Minnesota. I went 1 for 4 my first 2 games. No errors. Then I didn't play again for 2 weeks. Then I got sent back down to the minors. And I'm going, God, what did I do wrong? And Paul Shaw, who was the third baseman, then sprained his ankle. So 2 weeks and he'll be back. So they sent me back down. Then I was a September call-up. And I ended up, playing on Monday, and then you wouldn't play till next Tuesday. And Charlie Lau just sat and watched me. Never said a word, just watched me. And I hit 125 or 175 that year. And the next year, got called up 2 weeks after the season started. I went back to AAA. And then they traded Paul, and they basically said, you're playing third base. So at the All-Star break, I was hitting 200.
Okay.
And I had 200 at-bats, and nowadays, that's pretty good. There are a lot of guys hitting 200.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, it's the All-Star break, and we're in Cleveland, and he said, hey, I want to sit with you on the way home. I said, he's never said one word to me.
And he's the kid, and he's the hitting coach.
He's the hitting coach. He's just sitting there watching.
Right. Soaking
He
it
said,
in.
I've been watching you. You got 200 at-bats. You're hitting 200. You haven't made what adjustment? He said, I think you can play in the big leagues. I'm the only coach here. You're real close to be going back to AAA. And I think we can make you a player, a better hitter, if you listen to me. I said, well,
What do you got to
I was
lose?
at rock bottom.
Right.
And
Okay.
I think that's what his strategy was. Get them at rock bottom. Then he'll be willing to put forth the effort.
To listen.
Then he'll listen.
Right.
Then he'll be willing to change.
It's a good point.
And so all of a sudden, he says, okay, we have 3 days off for the All-Star break. This is 1974. And my brother Ken was the winning pitcher of the 74 All-Star game.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
In Pittsburgh, and he pitched for Pirates. He pitched for the Pirates.
That's awesome.
So I watched the game, and then the next day we had went to Lake of the Ozarks, me and Buck Martinez. We left Sunday night, and then we were there Monday, Tuesday, and then we drove back, probably 10 o'clock in the morning. Went to our place out in Raytown, packed up. We were going on the road and had to go to the stadium. And Charlie and I just talked, and he had some video of guys that he said, I like the way this guy swings. You like that swing? And then we go out on the field. We had no indoor tunnels. Mm-hmm. All the batting practice that we did was all in the field.
Right.
We had no batting tees. Yeah. We had no pitching machines. He's out there throwing. Al Zeke, our old equipment man, would go out and throw to us. And we started experimenting, trying to move me off the plate. He got me to take my top hand off so I swing through the ball, not around it. And all these little things. And he said, okay, good first day. He said, I'll see you at 3 tomorrow in Baltimore. I said, okay. So we go out and have early hitting there. And my objective or my goal was not to hit a ball to the right of the second baseman. So he wanted me to hit everything from the second baseman to the left field line.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I'd stay through the ball longer. And we're facing Ross Grimsley, I think, the first day. And, he's a tough left-hander. Kind of got 2 line drives up the middle. I'm going, it's pretty good.
Awesome.
Next day, we're facing somebody else, Mike Cuellar, another lefty. I got a couple base hits to left field. I'm going, man, I'm feeling pretty good about myself.
Right.
Well, we set up a goal. That goal was to get to 250 by the end of the season. All of a sudden, about a month and a half later, I get a base hit, and I come running back in the dugout, and I said, Charlie, we did it. We got to 250. He said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, you said our goal was to hit 250. He says, no, 260.
The bar moves.
I said, no, you said 250. He said, no, it's 260 now, you moron. He called me a mullet head. He used to call me mullet head.
He didn't want to get.
And you know what a mullet head is? It's a dumb fish. It's a fish that because he lived in the Keys.
All right.
And whenever he'd catch a mullet fish, instead of a snook wasn't a good edible fish, but mullet head, a snook, you just throw them back because they're not good eating.
Right.
So he started calling me mullet head. Yeah. Right. So all of a sudden I get to 292 with 4 games to go in the season. I come to the ballpark Sunday afternoon in Kansas City. And I get there, and Buck Martinez and Bruce Del Canton and Freddie Poctek, they're all glum-faced, and I go, what's wrong? And they said they fired Charlie Lau today. I go, you got to be kidding me. No. You got to be kidding me. I went 1 for 11 the rest of the year and ended up hitting 282. Right. And I really believed that if he was there, I would have hit 300.
Right.
But it just kind of let the air out of my balloon.
Oh, sure. Sure.
So I think there's a lesson in there. Number one, the fact that you had quote unquote made it, right? You made it to the bigs. Mm-hmm. You've got this hitting coach now that maybe watches for a little bit, approaches you and says, I've got some pointers.
Yep.
For you to kind of have that humility and say, maybe I really haven't made it. I'm going to be willing to listen to anything that he says. I think there's a big lesson in that, no matter what we're doing.
It's really not hard to make it to the major leagues. It's harder to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of guys that come up, go back down, and never get back up.
Sure.
Right. And when I became the interim hitting coach in 2013, I didn't tell anybody they had to change. I just offered suggestions. I think this would make you a better hitter. Try this in batting practice. Try this. And when guys were reluctant to try anything, that's when I said, this is just stupid.
Right.
I'm wasting my time. No one's listening to me. I mean, Pedro Grifol, I love the guy. He's a great friend. He was my assistant hitting coach. Mm-hmm. He's never played in the big leagues. Mm-hmm. I had more hits than every minor league hitting instructor and major league hitting instructor that we had. I got more hits in the big leagues than they have in their minor league careers.
Total.
And yet no one listens to me.
Right.
And so one day I was in a meeting with Ned Yost, and I came out in the cages behind the dugout. And Pedro was down there soft tossing. And here I'm off. I'm telling Sal, you're swinging too hard, man. Just 80%. And telling Moose, you hit the ball good. Who cares if they catch? I'm telling Hosmer, I don't know why you practice and you hit the shit out of the ball every time, taking your top hand off in BP, and then the game starts, you leave it on.
Right.
If I was you, I would practice the way you're going to play. Alex Gordon did the opposite. Alex, I don't know why you leave your top hand on every swing in BP, and then the game come, you take it off. To me, we're not gaining repetitions,
Right.
And then I walked into the cages, and they were all kind of standing around, and they all like to do their soft toss drills and stuff. So I walk in there and I go, hey, Moose, come on over here. I'm going to wait for Pedro. Sal, come over here. I'm waiting for Pedro. Haas, come over here. No, I'm waiting for Pedro. I just said, okay, screw you guys. I went in and told Ned Yost, I said, I'm done. My last game.
Right.
Why do you think that was? Because you
I don't know.
you were harder on them? Like you held them accountable?
I don't know. I don't know why no one wanted me to soft toss to them.
So, okay, so I heard you do an interview.
Do you think it was intimidating, though?
Well, I think
a little bit.
I think personally,
Right.
yeah, that's probably part of it. But I heard you do an interview one time where you had listened to something or somebody told you something that Albert Bell was talking about hitting, and that was it was like a poetic
Albert
thing.
Bell was a great hitter.
He was a great hitter.
He was a great hitter.
And you were having
Just
a conversation.
bad guy, but I heard he's a great guy now. He had a bad reputation.
Oh,
on
yeah,
the
he was
field
a hard ass.
and off the field. I heard now he is. I forget where he's living. I think he's living in Florida somewhere.
I think he's in Arizona.
Arizona. That's right. He is in Arizona, and I'm in Arizona part time. I'm going to look him up. I'd love to talk hitting with him.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
So
talk
I think you were
hitting
doing an interview with Brett Boone actually, and the conversation came up. How you were talking about something similar, if I remember correctly, and it's almost like if Darren talks to Drew, who you met out there, Drew's his son. If Darren tells Drew something and Drew says, screw it. That's just my dad. He doesn't know anything.
Right.
But if I go in and I tell the same thing, Drew's going to listen to me.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm wondering if that's maybe part of it, like having a different, perspective, a different voice coming from someone.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just resonates, but I don't know if George Brett's telling me how to hit. I'm listening.
Well,
right, exactly. I know when I'm in the box.
I'm not telling him anything that Charlie didn't tell me.
Right.
I'm not telling him that anything different that Charlie didn't tell Hal McRae, and I'm sure as hell not telling him anything different than 1980 when Charlie went over to the New York Yankees and Reggie hit 300 that year, the
30 home
first time
runs.
ever with 30 home runs.
Right.
If it worked for me, if it worked for Hal, if it worked for Joe Rudy, if it worked for Freddie Patek. Freddie might have been a 230 hitter. Charlie made him a 260 hitter.
Right.
I might have been a 270 hitter, but he made me a 300 hitter.
Right.
All I'm trying to do is relay that same information, but when you got no takers,
right.
it was like, I couldn't go to the ballpark and show my face in there anymore. I really couldn't. Because what am I going to do? We'd have guys that make it out, and they would come over to Pedro and say, how'd that look? And I'm sitting there. Pedro doesn't have one frickin' hit in the major leagues. I got 3,100 of them.
Right.
And they're not going to ask me. So that's when I knew.
That's when you knew.
There's always a time to go. That old saying, you'll never be welcome to stay over. If you overstay your welcome.
Right.
I figured I overstayed my welcome as an interim hitting coach. I said I'd do it for a month. I did it for 2. I would have loved to finish, but I wasn't getting any positive feedback from any of my teammates.
Exactly.
In fact, my best friend on the team was Kelvin Herrera.
Oh, yeah. He'd ask you questions all the time.
We were best friends. I'd have breakfast with him every day game. I introduced him to a BLT with an egg on it.
Oh.
Showed him how to make them. I showed him how to make them.
Fan for life.
And then every day game, we would sit there and we'd have a BLT together.
Oh, my gosh.
So speaking of, coaches and things, so one of the favorite questions we like to ask is, as your career progressed, who was your favorite manager that you played for?
Well, I think it'd be 2. I think it'd be 3. I had a lot of respect for 2 of my teammates I played with, John Wathan and Hal McRae. I love those guys. But I think the best manager I played for, and I love playing for all of them, Jim Fry, Billy Gardner for the month he was there. I loved them all. But Whitey Herzog, I thought, when he came over and started managing us, he came up to me one day, and at that time I was starting to become a decent player. I still didn't know if I was going to be a good player, but he came over and he said, hey, you're playing third and hitting third every day. Don't worry about anything. Just go out there and play hard. I don't care if you're 0 for 20, you're still hitting third. And that changed after sometimes when things were, guys couldn't get on base. Our leadoff guy couldn't. He called me in his office one day and he says, I'm going to hit you leadoff. I'm going to hit you leadoff for a week and just see what happens. And then I'd come back, okay, now I'm going to hit you second. Or I'm going to hit you fourth. So it was always top 3 or 4, just basically on how I was swinging and how the rest of the team were swinging. If Freddie Patek was getting on base to start off a game, he'd put me at third, So
right. That's
Hal,
cool.
Hal and I were usually side by side. Me and Hal. Hal would hit second, I'd hit third. I'd hit second, Hal would hit third.
Right.
And But Hal was probably my favorite teammate of all time.
I've heard you say that several times.
Just
Why
because
is
he
that?
taught me how to.
Yeah.
I just watching him play
Really?
inspired me to do that.
'Cause he kinda
stretch
said-
singles to doubles, break up double plays, don't take anything for granted.
Just lead by example.
Yeah,
Right.
and never, just kind of quiet in the clubhouse. But once that game started, you watch him and you go, man, he sets the tone.
He was intense, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Because didn't we get him from the Big Red Machine in the
And
early
he
70s?
learned from Pete Rose and Johnny Bench and Joe Morgan, and he came over to us. He was, I looked up to him, and we just became great friends.
That's awesome. That's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wasn't he? Didn't he? He was a hitting coach in Seattle for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
No, Tampa Bay, I think. I think it was Tampa Bay.
Okay.
Now, is it true what the 85 World Series, were you hanging out with Whitey at like the Chiefs game?
Went to the Chiefs game before Game 7. I couldn't sleep. After Game 6, I got home about 2:30 in the morning, and it was a night game, and went to sleep. I woke up, it was about 3:15. Went back to sleep, woke up, it was 3:45. Went back to sleep, woke up at 4. And I'm thinking it's time to go to the stadium, I just couldn't
Just
sleep.
amped up.
Right.
I don't know if I was amped up from Game 6 or scared to death about playing in Game 7.
Right.
Because, a lot of things can happen. You can have a great career, and I'm just going to mention one name, Billy Buckner. That's and that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And Buck till he passed away, was a very dear friend of mine. We were great. We went batting championships the same year. We wore the same shoes. We would get together in the winter with the shoe company, and then he got traded over to the Royals. Stayed with me for a while, and just
a great player.
admired the hell out. I admired the hell out of that guy, and what he had to go through to play a game. His ankles were so bad, and the icing, and he, guys tape their ankles. They put that little wrap underneath it. He didn't do that. He shaved his leg and put tape over it, right on his skin.
Oh my gosh.
It was just ridiculous. Blood coming out
Jesus.
after every game. He'd cut it off and then rip it, and blood would, He'd have to soak his ankles in ice water after a game, and it was just brutal what he had to go through. But love playing with him, love playing with Hal McRae. But, there are a lot of guys you play with that you get along with. A lot of guys you play with you really don't get along with.
Sure.
Okay.
But once you're
Like
on the
any other
field,
company, right?
Once you're on the field, hey,
Pulling in the same direction.
I'll kill for you, brother.
Yeah.
I'll kill
Game
for
on.
you.
That's important.
right.
I think
It
we
is.
always talk about it with our businesses. If the team is rowing in the same direction, then you're going to do some good
Right.
shit, right? But if you've got one person that's pulling away or trying to do their own thing, then it's demonstrative to the whole organization.
I always knew a guy that wouldn't be there very long in our organization back then. If he went 3 for 4 and we lost, he was happy. Wow. And if he went 0 for 4 and we won, he was pissed.
Yep.
Those guys don't sit around on championship teams.
No.
They don't sit around on championship teams. And that's, I think, a great analogy of what a winning player is. Doesn't care about his performance. He's out to help the team win.
Right.
And I hear Vinny Pasquantino say that all the time now. I'm just happy I got a hit to help the team win.
Yep.
And
that's
I
great.
love that.
Yeah.
I love that thought process.
It's hard to have a bunch of selfish people, whether it's on a team or in a business,
Sure.
that's all about themselves, right? Because I guarantee there are certain circumstances that no matter how awesome someone is, if they're all about themselves, they're eventually going to find themselves off that team or out of the clubhouse somewhere, right?
They'll work themselves out.
Yeah,
Coach them up or coach them out.
exactly.
For sure.
Yep.
So speaking of which, about possibly leaving a clubhouse, George, is there any stories that you can tell us? Was there any point in your career that they had talked or came to you about possibly trading you at all?
Yeah, there was one. I was young, real young, and there was a story. It was during the winter meetings, and I forget where they were. And back then, the newspapers were pretty much up to date. Mm-hmm. And there was a little newspaper in Southern California where I grew up called the Daily Breeze. Mm-hmm. And they used to have little articles, hey, here's what, in the winter meetings, they said the Royals are very close to making a trade with the Cincinnati Reds, Tony Perez for George Brett.
I was
20 years old. I was 20 years old, 21 years old.
Wow.
And I'm reading that, and I'm going, God, getting traded for the Royals, that would be brutal, but go to the Reds would be pretty awesome,
Yeah.
And thank God it never happened. I'm really happy it didn't happen. And then there was one late in my career that there was a rumor that I was going to get traded. When Whitey was with St. Louis,
okay,
I was going to get traded over there.
Holy smokes! Could you imagine the fans in Kansas City
and
the reaction of that?
That
didn't you have a meeting with Mr. Kaufman? I thought. You went to him
we
and
had some
him?
disagreements over some stuff and over contract issues and. Back then, he told me I didn't need an agent, and then sure enough, I agreed to all this stuff. And then 5 years later, I'm finding out some of this stuff wasn't written in the contract properly, and it cost me a lot of money.
Gotcha.
And so then I said, okay, I'm done. And then I went to St. Louis, and went to the World Series when Whitey was managing. And I was sitting behind home plate with a Cardinal hat on, and then I was up in the stadium club. I was up in the stadium club, and I was bartending and giving guys drinks and stuff, and everybody. And I have some really good friends that live in St. Louis,
right?
And they're all going, "Yeah, you got to get traded over here." Yeah, I said, "God, I'd love to come over here and play for the Rat again."
Oh my God!
Then all of a sudden, I get called into the principal's office, and Mr. K's office, and got a little yelled at. But
is that one of those moments that it's probably a good thing that social media and cameras were?
If they had Twitter then and Instagram and stuff, oh my God, it would have been really bad.
If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, Darren and Bobby thank you from the bottom of their hearts.
They hope you enjoyed this new episode. And if you did, please leave them a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you're listening. Please share this episode with others who may be interested in our community.
Also, feel free to let DC and BK know which business or community leaders you'd like to see covered in future episodes. Get in touch in the comments or on social media. See you next time for a new episode. And remember, always be cool.
This podcast is powered by Summit Lending, NMLS number 1850081, Equal Housing Lender.